All right, let's dive into one of the most jam-packed, dramatic topics in your entire GCSE history course, Elizabethan England. Now, this isn't just going to be another boring summary. Think of this as your secret weapon, your strategic blueprint for absolutely nailing that exam.
Look, if you're feeling a bit lost in a sea of rebellions, religious arguments, and, well, giant Spanish ships, you're definitely not alone. It's a massive topic. So the big question is, how on earth do you revise all of this without your brain completely melting?
Well, here's the trick. We go straight to the source. We're going to pull back the curtain and decode the official AQA specification. That's the very document the examiners use to write your questions. By the end of this, you'll know exactly what to focus on. We're going to turn that chaos into a clear, totally manageable plan. So here's our game plan. We're breaking it all down into 4 key chunks, exactly how the exam board sees it. First, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of her government, her court, her power, and all her problems. Then, we'll look at this so-called golden age and its massive social contrasts. After that, it's all the juicy stuff, the troubles at home and abroad. And finally, we're going to crack that special question on the historic environment. Okay, part 1, the view from the throne. To really get this era, you have to understand the political machine at its heart. We need to figure out how Elizabeth actually managed to hold on to power, who was in her inner circle, and what kind of challenges she was constantly fighting off.
Right, so a crucial word you've got to know is patronage. Just think of it like the political currency of the time. Elizabeth couldn't rule by herself, right? She needed this whole network of powerful people to be loyal to her. So by giving out fancy jobs, titles, and huge chunks of land, she was basically buying their support. Getting this system right was absolutely key to staying in control.
And of course, let's not forget, she was a woman ruling in a man's world in the 16th century. That came with its own massive set of problems. Her ministers, parliament, pretty much everyone in the country was obsessed with 2 questions. Who is she going to marry, and who gets the throne when she's gone? And this wasn't just idle gossip. This was a huge deal for the future of the country. So on top of all that, she had to constantly handle a very demanding parliament and try to balance the egos and ambitions of her powerful ministers. And this all just explodes right at the end of her reign with the rebellion of her one-time favorite, the Earl of Essex. It was this massive, dramatic final test of her power, and it's a perfect example of all the tensions simmering at court. So while the rich and powerful were playing political games, what was life like for everybody else? We always hear this period called a golden age, a time of amazing culture and wealth. And sure, for some people it was. But for your exam, you have to understand that this was an age of really stark contrasts, basically of riches and rags. This slide really shows you the 2 sides of the coin. On one side, you've got the rising gentry. These are the wealthy landowners just a step below the top nobles. And they're building huge houses and living it up. But on the other side, a massive crisis of poverty and homelessness, so bad that the government had to step in and create the first ever poor laws just to try and deal with it. And this is the golden age part you've definitely heard about. Brand new professional theaters were popping up for writers like Shakespeare. English sailors like Hawkins and Drake were bursting onto the world stage, taking on the Spanish and exploring parts of the world no English person had ever seen. And you had adventurers like Sir Walter Raleigh dreaming of building new colonies in America. Okay, lock this date range into your brain. 1577 to 1580. This is when Sir Francis Drake sailed all the way around the entire world. I mean, this was an unbelievable achievement at the time, a huge boost for England's reputation, and, let's be honest, the fact his ship came back stuffed with stolen Spanish treasure definitely didn't hurt. Okay, on to part 3, the Troubles. Because from the late 1560s onwards, Elizabeth's reign was really defined by one threat after another, both from inside England and from the global superpower of the day, Spain. The threat from English Catholics was constant, and it just kept escalating. First, there's a big rebellion up in the north. Then, things get supercharged when the Pope excommunicates Elizabeth, which basically means he fires her from the Catholic Church and tells every Catholic in the world she isn't a legitimate queen. This lit the fuse for a whole series of secret plots, all trying to kill Elizabeth and replace her with her Catholic cousin, Mary, Queen of Scots. And as you can see, every plot pushed Elizabeth's government closer to one final terrible solution: executing Mary. But, and this is super important, don't think the pressure was only from Catholics. You also had the Puritans. These were really strict Protestants who thought Elizabeth's new church was still way too Catholic. They wanted to purify it of all that stuff, which created a totally different kind of headache for Elizabeth to deal with. At the same time,
Things with Spain were just spiraling out of control. It wasn't one single thing. It was this perfect storm brewing. You had English sailors like Drake, who were basically pirates, constantly raiding Spanish ships and colonies. England was Protestant, Spain was ultra-Catholic. England was secretly helping rebels in the Netherlands fight against Spanish rule. And for King Philip of Spain, the execution of Mary, Queen of Scots, a Catholic queen, well, that was the final straw.
And the result of all that? The legendary Spanish Armada in 1588. Its defeat was a monumental David versus Goliath victory for England. It was seen as proof that God was on the Protestant side, it created a huge wave of national pride, and it pretty much secured England's future as an independent Protestant country. So, we've covered the people, the plots, and the politics. Whew. Now for our final section, where we look at the places. This part of your exam isn't just about what happened, it's about where it happened, and how old buildings and sites can actually tell us a story. And you really need to tune in for this bit. This single question is worth a whopping 10% of your total marks on this paper. Getting this right can seriously boost your final grade.
So here's your toolkit. This is your cheat sheet. For whatever historic site they throw at you in the exam, the examiners want you to analyze these things. Why is it located there? What was it actually for? How does its design show you what Elizabethans cared about? Who built it? Who lived there? And how does it connect to all the big events we've just been talking about?
You know, they might give you a Grand Tudor manor house, which just screams, I'm part of the wealthy gentry and I want everyone to know it. Or it could be an Elizabethan theater, showing this new explosion of popular culture. The key is to use the building itself as historical evidence to back up everything you know about the period.
So there you have it. The crucial point is, you now have the blueprint. You know what the examiners are actually looking for. You've got a clear structure to hang your revision on, breaking this huge, messy topic down into 4 chunks you can actually get your head around.
Here it is one last time, your revision checklist. Focus your notes, your flashcards, and your practice answers around these 4 core themes. If you do that, you'll be building your knowledge in the smartest, most effective way possible. And I'll leave you with a classic exam-style question to chew on. Out of all these massive issues, which one do you think was the single greatest challenge Elizabeth faced? Now, there's no single right answer here. The whole point is thinking about how you would argue your case, how you'd use evidence to back it up. And that is how you get the top marks. Good luck!